Hello everyone! Today I'm going to be doing my January wrap-up of all the books I read this month, the first of the year, and I actually read a lot for me, 9 books, which I'm really happy about, and some that are like favorites and some that were really disappointing. So mix, and I think we'll just get started and I will go in order of when I finish them. Actually, the first book I finished this month was Misery by Stephen King. It's only my second King that I've ever read. I've also read The Shining, and I'm sure you're all familiar with what this is about. It's about Annie Wilkes, who comes across her favorite author stranded in a car accident, bunch of broken bones, and instead of taking him to a hospital, she takes him to her house and holds him captive and essentially tortures him into resurrecting a character from a series that he had been writing that he had killed off. And she says that he'll stay alive and maybe eventually be freed if he writes her this book. Brings Misery back. Yeah, it deserves the hype. I really loved this book. I think Annie Wilkes was maybe one of the best characters I've ever read. I think she's terrifying because she's sometimes so calm, so serene, but then she like walks in with an axe. And like reading from Paul's perspective of like never knowing when he's safe, of sometimes having these like almost normal conversations with her and then like the next day later like flying off the handle, and how he's always like treading so carefully to try to survive and just like make it through the next few days. It's also very brutal. It is like when he's in pain, you feel the pain. It was amazing. I loved it. I think it would have been a 5-star if not for the fact that King like keeps inserting these these pages and pages and pages of the book he's writing, that he's writing for Annie. Like pages and pages on end of like a really boring, shitty book that Paul's writing, and it just like completely takes you out of the story when like Annie's like about to like do her next thing, and then you're reading about like Misery and like her love interest. It's just very annoying, and that's like a common complaint that I've seen people say is really annoying, but I overall like loved this book. Noelle had been recommending it enough that I finally caved, and yeah, it was absolutely worth it. I thought it was awesome. Next, The Lost Man by Jane Harper. Another really great book. I was surprised by this because sometimes like these murder mysteries are not really my thing, but this was, yeah, a real surprise. I loved it. So it opens with this man Cameron, his body being found by his brothers, and they all live in the Australian outback. They've grown up there. They kind of know the ropes and how to survive in this really harsh climate, and Cameron's found completely in the middle of nowhere, nothing around him for miles on any direction, and he's dehydrated. He's basically like burnt to a crisp, and he died like this really horrible, painful death. And he died knowing that there was no one to help him. And his 2 brothers, what are their names? Nathan and Bub, are kind of standing over his body, immediately knowing that there's foul play because, like I said, Cam grew up in the outback. He knew like never to leave his radio, never to leave his car, never to leave water. So obviously there's foul play that he died this way. What made me really like it was the actual atmosphere and the landscape, because it's so harsh. And like I said, there's nobody around for miles, and the only people that live in like 3 hours each direction are these brothers and this one family. So you know that something's going on with the family, and Cam turned up dead. So we're kind of like piece by piece learning a little bit about each member of the family, like one by one. And I think this book was not thrilling, at least not to me, like no major shocking bits of information. It was kind of just like piece by piece you're learning a little bit more and like kind of forming your own theories, and then like, you know, your theory gets like shredded, like, you know, you learn new information. But I think just like reading about this really like isolated family in the middle of nowhere, and everyone's kind of got like, you know, their bones in the closet, their skeletons in the closet, and yeah, I loved it. I mean, the major like shocking moment where you like find out what happened wasn't actually that shocking, but I still really liked it. It didn't bother me that I kind of could see where it was going after like a little bit, because I just like loved the atmosphere and I loved the way that it was described, and like, yeah, I thought it was awesome. Loved it. 4 stars. 4 out of 5. Next was a really shitty one. It's a classic, and I don't understand why. Yeah, it's The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I'm sure a lot of you can relate that we had to read The Lottery in like ninth grade, 8th grade, and like that was a lot better than this. But it's a classic, so I wanted to read it. So it is about Hill House, this very scary house that's supposed to have supernatural happenings and has like a long history of suspicious things. And this man, Dr. Montague, he wants to research what's going on. And he sends out these letters to random people. Well, they're not random. He does a little bit of research, but sends these letters out inviting people to come with him to Hill House and help him like conduct these investigations. And one of the women that he reaches out to is Eleanor. Eleanor. She has been caring for her ailing mother, who she really hates, and she has like no friends in the world. And so when she gets this letter, she's like, oh my god, my chance of freedom, my chance to do something on my own, to do something fulfilling. And she decides to take him up on this offer and go to this really horrible place. And when she gets there, she immediately feels like this oppressive, dark entity, and goes into the house anyway. And she's with these few other people and Dr. Montague basically investigating the house. And I guess like the way the house is described is actually pretty cool. It's like completely like a maze, and there's doors leading to doors, and every room is blocked off, and it's always hard to get around. You can never find anything. Like you walk through the same rooms each day and you still happen to get lost. So that was cool. I guess like the actual physical house was cool. But just nothing happens in this book. Like nothing scary happens. It's just over. Like I don't get it. It was just really boring. I don't get it. 2 stars. Ooh. The next book I read, I also really hated, and I'm sorry I'm being so negative right now. We'll get back to really good ones in a second. But I actually expected to really like this book, so this was disappointing. This is Find Me by Andre Aciman. It's the sequel to Call Me By Your Name, which I read in October and like absolutely loved. It was beautiful. I mean, I'd seen the movie 100 times. I kind of knew I was going to love it, but it's kind of split into like almost like 3 sections. We're following different relationships each time, and the whole first section is Samuel, Elio's father, who got divorced from Elio's mother, and he's on a train going to visit Elio. And he's sitting in the same compartment as a young woman who's going to visit her father. And they kind of strike up a conversation, and he's immediately like struck by her and thinks she's so deep and so magnificent and so smart. And like, I just all of a sudden, like right off the bat, didn't get it. Like their conversation was not deep, at least not to me. I didn't think it was like anything special. I didn't think she was saying anything profound that made her like a really intriguing person. But Samuel was instantly struck by her. And as soon as they get off the train, she invites him to go have lunch with her and her father. I think she's amazing. And the biggest thing that like annoyed me endlessly about this book was just like the really stupid observations that Samuel had. That he wrote some down because they were so bad. Like examples. He says like he notices that she doesn't have painted nails. Her name's Miranda. That she doesn't have painted nails like other women her age, and get matching tattoos, and they're like adults, like. And then he is like, oh, I can't believe I've been lonely all my life. Like, I've just been waiting for her. Like, where's she been? And then he, like, ponders that for a second. He's like, oh, yeah, she was in diapers. And I'm much older than she is, and that's why I was alone. Okay. So, yeah, their relationship, I just, like, was so not interested in. Didn't think that they were, like, having any profound conversations. And, like, I thought Osman's writing Call Me By Your Name was, like, so beautiful. And in this book, I just felt like a different author to me. I don't know. And then kind of the next section is Elio and this relationship he has with a man named Miguel. Again, I mean, this relationship had more to it. It was more believable. It was not, like, ridiculous. I just, like, wasn't that invested, and I think it kind of took a turn into learning about, like, Miguel's father and kind of, like, family research that just, like, I wasn't that interested in. And then it kind of, like, you have to wait for, like, what you really want until, like, the end of the book, and that, like, saved it for me for being, like, a 2-star instead of a 1, because we did get like what we all want. We did get what we were all waiting for, but like the whole, like the majority of the book didn't do anything for me. I don't know if I'm like emotionally deficient. That's definitely probable and possible in the whole thing, but yeah, it didn't work for me at all. 2 stars. The next book I read is Outlawed by Anna North. I mean, look at this cover. Can you even imagine? It's beautiful. So this book sounded amazing. It's about this girl, Ada, who at 17 she's getting married. She's at this exciting time in her life. She's marrying a boy she really likes. Her mother is like kind of the most prominent midwife in her area, and Ada's kind of been training with her mother, learning about women's bodies and about birth and about labor, and she's really interested in all of that. She's very like scientifically minded, but then kind of jump to a year later and Ada is still not pregnant and still hasn't had a child. And this is a very like Salem-esque town, and instantly there's suspicion put on her that she's a witch, that she's somehow, that her barrenness, or, you know, it could be her husband, but that her lack of conceiving a child is connected to, like, her being a witch, and her mother basically says, you're in danger now of being hanged as a witch. This has happened in her town, like, time and time again. Ada flees to save her life and kind of ends up with this band of misfits in the woods out west, and they're all outlaws. And this is the part that like sounds amazing. It's like a group of queer women who have either been kind of run out of town or fled from their hometown because, you know, they were barren or because they were caught in a relationship that, you know, they weren't supposed to be in. Outlaw group is under kind of the care of the kid. That's really like infamous, awesome, legendary character that everyone kind of knows about throughout all the towns. And the kid is a non-binary character, and you learn a little bit about them, but not enough. Like, I wanted more about, you know, the kid's story, but you do get a little bit. I think where this book kind of was lacking for me is that a lot of the characters, a lot of the outlaws, all we really learn about them, why are they here? And you kind of hear their trauma story of why they fled, why they were kicked out, losing a child, not being able to have a child, whatever it may be. And that's kind of all you learn about a lot of the characters is like the one bad thing that happened to them, and they don't have anything else really going for them. And I think there was so much potential to make them like a really awesome band of misfit outcasts that like were all like so multi-layered, and yeah, I just felt like it was kind of lacking in that way, but it still was a really fun like backdrop to read, and I think I expected it to be a lot more lighthearted than it actually was. It actually did have some, you know, important conversations like about race, about like midwifery, about wanting to know more about your own body, about like bodily autonomy, because I think Ada is like so desperate to know why she hasn't had a child, why she can't conceive, and kind of this like driving force is to figure out, just to know more about her own body. So I think that was really awesome. My sister read this and loved it. And I did really, really like it. I think I wanted to know more about the characters. So I gave it a 3 out of 5, which is still pretty good. Next. Oh, yes, next. Amazing. In the Woods by Tana French. This was amazing. Perfect. No complaints. So this is about Rob Bryan. He's a detective, and him and his partner Cassie are sent to investigate the murder of a young girl. But what nobody knows is that Rob Bryan's real name is actually Adam Ryan, and 20 years prior he disappeared with his 2 friends in the exact place where this little girl has now been found murdered. He grew up in the same town, and 2 decades prior he disappeared with his 2 friends into the woods, and there was a search party. Everyone was looking for them. They had always played in these woods. They were very familiar with them, and a few hours later Rob Ryan, was found kind of covered in blood with his shirt ripped and having no memory of what happened. Of course, he was interviewed, and yeah, he has no memory of anything that happened, and the case went cold. His friends were never found. Nobody has any answers. So Rob Bryan takes on this case, which obviously he's like much too close to, and him and his partner Cassie go and investigate. And I think he's obviously hoping to solve this new murder of this young girl, but he's also kind of hoping to kind of spark memories, like hidden and buried memories in himself, and kind of figure out what happened. And I think he was just like an awesome character to read about. He constantly reminds you that he's not to be trusted, that he's super biased, that he can't see the case clearly because like he's kind of having like memory whiplash of like, oh, actually there is a little bit more than he remembers than he's originally thought. So yes, he should not be investigating this new case, safe to say. I think I've read a lot of reviews, and a lot of people are really frustrated with the ending of this book because it's not, you don't get all the answers that you want, which is definitely valid. But it actually didn't bother me at all. I think there's enough to hold on to. There's enough answers, but there's also a lot of room for you to have your own theories, which didn't bother me at all. I have my own theory and I feel confident in it. But I get why some people wouldn't like that. But actually, I loved the ending. I kind of like a little bit of openness for you to kind of form your own opinion. But yeah, I thought this was amazing, and I really want to read. I think there's a lot, actually, the rest of the books in the Dublin Murder Squad, which is like all of French's books in this specific detective group. I don't think it's the same characters, it's just the same. Dublin Murder Squad. Yeah, because I loved her writing, so I will definitely check that out. That was a 5 out of 5. Okay. And now my favorite, I think my favorite book of the month. Yeah, I think so. The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I'm sure you've heard of this book, heard everyone talk about this book. It deserves all the hype that it's ever gotten. It's amazing. I was just so intimidated by it. I just thought it would be like so pretentious because like the characters are pretentious, and I thought the writing would be too, but okay, sorry if I just moved. I just realized that my camera stops recording after 20 minutes automatically, so that is good to know. Okay, I was talking about my favorite book of the month, I think. So the setup of this book, I think, is like one of the best setups of all time, because instantly from page 1 you know that there's been a murder, you know who's dead, you know who's responsible, and the narrator was actually involved in the murder, and you're kind of watching this really close-knit friend group that's kind of cut off from the rest of society because they do all their classes together, just like the few of them, with one professor the entire time that they're at school, and you kind of see that they're completely consumed by each other and they have this one mind. The best bits of this book are just really the characters and like learning about them and going into their mind and into their little meetings at midnight while they're all completely wasted and you're kind of watching their brains work. And it's really like they're all horrible people doing horrible things to each other and to other people, but you're like so committed and you want to know more about them, and you kind of like excuse so many behaviors because you just are like completely obsessed with learning about them. And I think like specifically Henry was like one of the most interesting characters ever. He was so fun to read about. 5 out of 5. I can't believe I waited so long to read it. It deserves all the hype. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. Would 100% recommend. Okay, and then I reread Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Look at this cover, isn't it so pretty? Those green pages. So I actually have read this book, but it was my senior year of high school and it was like for a class. And I like say I'm such a huge Austen fan, but what I really mean is that I'm like a Colin Firth and Alan Rickman fan, which is absolutely important. But I want to be a real fan and want to read all of her novels this year. Yeah, it's perfect. It's such like a happy feel-good book. The people are so ridiculous. That scene with Lady Catherine de Bourgh, love it. It's just, yeah, such a happy book that like you can reread a million times, and it's just one of those books. Okay, and the last book I read this month was so disappointing. But I still kind of gave it a 3 out of 5 because it did impress me in a lot of ways. And that was The Outsider by Stephen King. So this is only, like I said, like my 3rd King that I've ever read, and it really is like has the perfect setup. So it opens up with Terry Matefield being very publicly arrested by like thousands of people at a baseball game that he's actually coaching, and he's arrested in front of all of these people because the detectives are like absolutely sure that they have their guy for a really, really brutal murder of a young boy. That a dozen eyewitnesses account of him like covered in blood at the scene of the crime, talking to the boy who was murdered. They have his fingerprints everywhere. They have his DNA everywhere. They're like absolutely positive. They're like, he's our guy. There's no way he's not. But then they kind of go through his alibi and work through it with his lawyer, and it becomes very clear that he has a really great alibi, that he was in another city at the time of the murders. He was with all his colleagues, all his fellow teachers, and there's fingerprints, DNA, video recording of being in this different city. So great setup that there's physical evidence of him being in 2 places at once. So the first like half of this book was incredible. So fast-paced, so intense. You're kind of you're going into like a lot of different households in the community, seeing how the murder and the arrest and everything that's happened since has kind of affected everyone. And it's just like, complete chaos. And it's so intense, and it's like so fast paced. And then like the second half of the book was just like such a letdown, because it's like I really didn't think King was going to go that direction, because I think it got, in my opinion, kind of silly and kind of ridiculous, and that really made it not scary anymore and not intense anymore. And I think even like the really big climactic moment that we've been waiting for so long just wasn't really climactic in any way. It kind of was a major letdown. But you know, it's King. He's still an amazing writer, and it definitely is still like entertaining and exciting. It's just the first half was so much better, and it's kind of set it up to be this epic book, and it was just kind of a letdown. But still, I'm going to keep trying to work my way through his books, because he has a lot, and I really liked the other two I've read. So if you have any suggestions about like amazing King books, because I don't want to waste my time with some of the bad ones, because he has like honestly too many books. So please let me know if you have any recommendations for me, because that would be awesome. So this is a 3 out of 5. But that is it for this month. Those are all the books I read in January. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Bye guys.